Hi everyone, this is Shannon Anatomy Physiology Discussion Board 6, and we're going to do a quick review of the Brainstem Respiratory Center. And so let's go right down here. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the major components of the Brainstem Respiratory Center that we're going to be focusing on today. It's going to be the pons area and the medulla oblongata. Within this area, you're going to have 3 pairs of respiratory centers in the reticular formation of the medulla oblongata and the pons. There is going to be the ventral respiratory group, which is right here, the ventral respiratory group. You're going to have the dorsal respiratory group, which is within the medulla oblongata, and you're going to have the pons, the pontine respiratory group, which is the pneumotaxic center, which is within the pons. So there is one of each on the right and left side of the brainstem. They are bilateral to each other. 2 sides, they communicate with each other. So respiratory muscles contract symmetrically. Let's start with the ventral respiratory, the VRG. It sets the rhythm for breathing, how often you're going to breathe. Its output goes to the spinal integrating center that gives rise to the intercostal and phrenic nerves, and to the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm. It's within the nucleus in the medulla with 2 commingled webs of neurons, inspiratory neurons and expiratory neurons within the area. And then you have the VRG group, which is, this is what we just went over. We're going to go to the dorsal respiratory group. DRG is the integrating center in that it modifies the rate to adapt to conditions and modifies the respiratory rhythm. So we have a web of neurons that extend from much of the length of the medulla between the VRG and central canal of the brainstem. So one thing, the DRG nerves extend into the VRG nerves, but the VRG neurons do not extend into the DRG. The vagus and glossopharyngeal nerves bring sensory impulses to the DRG from the lungs and airways, and the peripheral chemoreceptors, which we talk about over here, chemoreceptors they communicate between the joint in these areas. So this is within the medulla oblongata. You're going to have the dorsal and respiratory center and the ventral respiratory center, which they communicate to keep rhythm within the respiratory center. The pontine is going to help to these. It's going to communicate with higher brain centers, the peripheral receptors. Their output fine-tunes the breathing rhythm during activities such as speaking, sleeping, exercise, to help to adapt to various conditions within the respiratory system. So this whole area, very, very, very important in the brainstem and keeping a healthy breathing pattern. For example, if we're not getting enough oxygen in our system, the chemoreceptors will detect that, and that'll trigger a response in the medulla oblongata within these reticular formations to help to regulate the pH within the blood stream and the pH within the spinal fluid as well, to keep your body basically a homeostasis, a balance within our breathing. And so we're going to just go over this briefly. You have the ventral VRG respiratory group. You have the dorsal respiratory group. and the Pontine Respiratory Group, which they coordinate to give the body its balance within the breathing. So you can see why the autonomic unconscious cycle of breathing is controlled by the three pairs of the respiratory center and the reticular formation of the medulla oblongata and the pons. Thank you very much for listening.